In the mid-1940s in Australia, a group of criminals travel the roads at night, carrying various crates that they have stolen from a military vehicle. In the middle of the journey, Sean, the rookie driver, ends up driving over a pothole, causing the rear doors to open and the crates to fall to the ground. Quickly, Dylan, the leader of the criminals, gets out of his car and orders them to collect all the gold bars immediately. The man also states that he no longer wants the rookie to be responsible for driving the van, and orders his other henchmen to drive the vehicle. After recovering the cargo, the criminals continue on their journey, but thanks to the distraction of the men, the pair end up skidding off the road, causing them to fall into the river. Desperate, the henchmen escape from the vehicle through the windows and swim to the shore, where they are scolded by their boss once again. Trying to calm him down, the man says that the crates will be safe for now, as no one will be able to find them at the bottom of the river. However, Dylan doesn't agree and tells him that he will take care of the situation from now on. Before leaving, the criminal signals to one of his henchmen, and without wasting any time, the man strikes the driver in the neck with his knife, leaving Sean extremely frightened. Dylan then kicks his subordinate, who falls into the river lifeless. Now that he has meted out his punishment, the man begins to think of a way to recover the crates, and concludes that the best option is to hire some professional divers. So the group of criminals leave the place, not even realizing that the henchman's body has just been pulled down by something that resides at the bottom of the river. In the morning, in one of the rural areas of the region, Clara helps her partner Jimmy after another diving mission, and noticing that Ernie is not in the workshop, the woman asks where the man is. The diver replies that his colleague hasn't woken up yet because he's been drinking all night. Irritated, Clara goes to Ernie's room, and after waking him up, she updates him on the report on the workshop's diving tools and equipment. In addition, the woman says that she is excited to start work on the city bridge, but upon hearing this, the man reveals that the contract has not been concluded. Ernie explains that since they don't have their own boat for this type of mission, their prices are no longer as attractive as they used to be, and since they haven't made any money recently, he says he won't be able to pay his employees. Ernie apologizes for the situation, but Clara replies that despite the problems, they will manage to get out of this situation and become a successful organization again. So that her boss can get back on his feet, the woman suggests that he help Jimmy with the valves, while she sets off to fix the truck's winch. During her work, Clara receives a visit from the criminal's boss, who asks to speak to the owner of the site. After receiving the pair, Ernie takes the men to his office, and Dylan discovers that just like him, the leader of the divers has served in the army during the war. Wanting to get straight to the point, the criminal explains that one of his friends has had an accident in the river nearby, and he needs a group of professionals to rescue his belongings from the vehicle. Afraid of losing his only clients, Ernie accepts the job, but Dylan explains that his only rule is that none of the divers should ask any questions about the contents of the crates, and despite feeling that this service doesn't seem right, the man decides to accept the deal. After the negotiation, the criminals leave, and Clara questions why they are not allowed to know what they are looking for. In order to convince his employee, Ernie explains that he is tired of living in debt in that shed, and shows her the amount of money the men will pay when the job is finished. Seeing the huge amount of money, Clara gets extremely excited and tells him that they will be able to get a new boat, as well as repairing all the appliances that have been damaged for some time. With everything ready, Ernie and his companions set off towards the river, where they meet Janice, Dylan's main henchman, who asks them to accompany him in his vehicle. A few minutes later, the divers meet up with the rest of the criminals, and when he notices that the team consists only of Clara and Jimmy, the man gets angry. Ernie then replies that they are the best pair of divers in the region, and Dylan asks why they are so confident. Upon hearing this, Jimmy replies that he used to spend a lot of time underwater as a child, while Clara honed her skills during her service in the Australian Women's Army. So Dylan decides to allow the pair to take part in the mission, and after unloading the equipment, Ernie helps his companions put on their diving suits. While they're waiting for the professionals, Janice asks when they're going to tell them about the contents of the crates, but Dylan says that it won't make any difference, as they're going to finish off all the divers as soon as the job is done. With everything ready, Clara and Jimmy walk down to the depths of the river, where they start looking for the vehicle while Ernie manages the oxygen cables and safety ropes. Using the communication radios, the woman warns her boss about low visibility in the water, and the man asks them to try to stay on the bottom so they don't get lost. Suddenly, Jimmy sees a large silhouette swimming around them, and asks if Clara has noticed the same thing. However, the woman didn't spot anything around her, and as they walk along the bottom, the pair manage to find the van. Noticing the position in which the vehicle was left, Clara explains that they would need a crane to retrieve it, but on hearing this, Dylan tells her that this won't be a problem, as they only need what's inside the van. So that they can open the trunk, Jimmy walks to the driver's door and tries to retrieve the key, which has been abandoned in the ignition. Trying to understand what's inside those boxes, Clara approaches the glass to read the labels, but at that moment, the woman is pushed by a large fish, which knocks her to the ground. Confused, Jimmy asks what's going on, and before he can react, the diver is attacked by a shark, which tries to devour her head, causing its mouth to get stuck in her helmet. Because of the confusion, the oxygen cables end up coming loose from Clara's suit, and due to desperation and lack of air, she ends up unconscious at the same moment. Trying to keep control of the situation, Ernie shouts for Jimmy to try and hold on to his companion so that he can pull them to shore as quickly as possible. Sean quickly runs to help the man turn the crank, allowing the group to rescue Clara, who wakes up seconds later. Analyzing the woman's outfit, Jimmy finds the tooth of a bull shark and alerts Dylan to the presence of the predator, leaving the criminal confused, as sharks don't usually swim in rivers. However, the divers explain that it was probably a bull shark, a species that usually swims for hundreds of kilometers to have its young, and then returns to the ocean. Upon hearing this, Dylan starts to get angry and asks why the professionals are so scared of the predator, since that's exactly what they deal with all the time. Without patience, Ernie says that a bull shark is extremely aggressive and almost always attacks divers who approach it. Disgusted with the divers' attitudes, the criminal says that the value of this snag will be deducted from the final payment, and goes off in search of a fisherman with his henchmen. Later, the criminals return to the site, and Dylan reveals that he has found a fisherman for the job, and tells him that he will come the next day. In the morning, Bobby, a big fisherman from the area, arrives at the camp, and so that he can complete his plan as soon as possible, the gang leader tells him that he will pay him an extra £50 if he catches the shark by noon. Without wasting any time, the man asks Jimmy and Sean to accompany him, as they will need strong people to capture the predator. After sailing to the center of the river, Bobby throws some fish scraps around the boat, so that he can attract the shark's attention, and soon after, he casts out his fishing line. From now on, all they have to do is wait for the animal, and Sean remains alert, holding the fisherman's rifle to use if necessary. Suddenly, Bobby feels a snap in his line, and noticing how hard he is being pulled, he shouts for Jimmy to help him hold the fishing rod. However, the line ends up snapping, allowing the animal to escape. Angry, the fisherman tries to fix his rod as quickly as possible, but just then, Sean spots the shark approaching and is ordered to shoot it. Realizing that the young man has no idea how to use the rifle, Jimmy takes the gun from his hands and tries to hit the predator, but to no avail, and the animal gets angrier and angrier. Thanks to this, the shark charges the boat, attacking the engine with its mouth, and despite trying to shoot at its target, the diver is unable to hit it. Bobby quickly grabs his harpoon and waits for the right moment to catch the animal. The problem is that before they can react, the trio are attacked from under the hull once again, causing everyone to fall into the water. Desperate, Jimmy and Sean climb back into the boat, but just as they are about to be pulled back in, Bobby is swallowed by the shark, which removes one of his arms. The terrifying scene sends the pair into a panic, making them unable to help the fisherman, who is taken to the bottom of the river and turned into a huge feast for the predator. So that they won't be next, Jimmy and Sean return to the bank, where Clara and Ernie rush to check that their friend is all right. At the same time, Dylan mocks Bobby's attack, leaving the woman completely disgusted by his words. Tired of it all, Ernie decides to call the police to warn the fisherman about what happened, but the criminal tries to stop him, but the diver says that his team won't take any more risks on that job. To back up his words, the man throws his paycheck on the ground, but before they can leave, the whole team ends up being surrendered by the bandits, who point their guns in their direction. Dylan then knocks Ernie to the ground and reveals that what's in those crates are gold bars, which he and his henchmen have stolen. Confused by the criminal's intentions, the diver asks what will happen when they recover the cargo, but the man replies that nothing bad will happen to them. Realizing that they have no choice, the trio get on with the job and start building a wooden crate while being watched by the bandits. At this point, Jimmy tries to talk to his boss in his native language, but Janice intimidates him and orders him to talk in English, otherwise he will be eliminated. With the crate built, the divers gather to put it in the water, and Ernie explains that they will use the crate to find the best way to reach the vehicle at the bottom of the river. After throwing a rope with some bait to distract the shark, Clara helps Jimmy and Ernie into their wetsuits and asks the boss to allow her to go in his place. However, the leader of the divers won't allow the woman to risk herself again, since they are only in that situation because of the decisions he has made. At that moment, Janice notices that the rope has been hooked by the shark, and runs to alert Clara, who starts turning the crank so that Jimmy and Ernie walk towards the vehicle, while Dylan manages the safety cables. After a few minutes of walking, following the route traced by the crate's rope, the pair manage to reach the van and approach it to open the trunk. Realizing that the amount of boxes was a little more than they had imagined, Ernie asks Jimmy to release his portable light, and soon afterwards, they begin to unload the objects. At that moment, Janice realizes that the rope seems to have been broken by the predator, and runs to alert Clara, who says that her companions need to return as soon as possible. Hearing the alert, Ernie asks Jimmy to keep an eye on the shark and hurries to tie the boxes of gold bars to the crate they've made. Soon afterwards, the man asks Clara to try to pull the load with the winch, but the rope ends up getting stuck and the diver decides to reduce the weight a little. Thanks to this, Sean manages to pull the load a good distance, but the crate bumps into a tree in the middle of the way, forcing the pair to move away from the vehicle to adjust it. Despite the difficulties, the divers manage to unstick the object, but before they can return to the vehicle to protect themselves, they end up being surprised by the shark, which takes a powerful bite out of Ernie's arm. Desperate, Jimmy hits the animal with his spear, and after handing the man his knife, he shouts for Clara to pull his companion back to the surface immediately. The problem is that the predator is extremely fast, and before he can be rescued, Ernie is attacked once again by the shark, which swallows his body. Jimmy quickly returns to the surface to help his friend, and together they manage to pull their boss back. At the same time, Dylan turns off the truck's winch and goes to the recovered cargo, happy to finally see his stolen treasure. In a panic, Clara and Jimmy try to remove Ernie's suit so that they can tend to his wounds, but there's nothing more they can do, and the man asks them to get out of there. However, the pair refuse to do so, and the woman shouts for the criminals to help her save her boss, but the men just ignore her. After looking at his friends one last time, Ernie ends up losing his life in Clara's arms, and in a rage at the loss of his great friend, Jimmy picks up the knife and lunges at the criminals, who point their guns in his direction. Wanting to humiliate the diver, Dylan orders him to try and attack him, and Janice decides to pull out his pocket knife so that they can have a fair fight. In a rage, Jimmy throws his knife at the criminal, who is instantly defeated. Dylan then prepares to finish off the diver, but Clara stops him, saying that he'll never get his boxes back if he does that. The leader of the criminals then gives up on attacking Jimmy, and as punishment, he starts hitting him repeatedly, while Sean tries to calm Janice down. The next day, Dylan orders the divers to start another attempt to recover the shipment, and starts mocking Clara, saying that she should honor her boss Ernie. What's more, the criminal orders Sean to use the man's body as bait, and outraged by everything he's hearing, Jimmy says he'll get revenge soon. So, having no choice, Jimmy prepares Clara to dive into the river, and after finding the vehicle, the woman wastes no time in positioning the rest of the shipment in the wooden crate. At this point, the diver realizes that the shark has already noticed her, and quickly swims to the front seats so that she can hide until the animal moves away. As she does so, Clara finds a revolver inside the vehicle, and while she is examining it, she is surprised by the predator, which enters through the window. Desperate, the woman goes out the other side, and using a branch, she manages to trap the shark inside the van. Now that she has escaped the attack, Clara hides the revolver behind her waistband and returns to the shore while the criminals finish pulling out the crate. Taking advantage of the distraction of the bandits, who are enjoying their gold bars, the woman reveals to Jimmy about the gun she found, and after removing her costume, she hides the object once again, so that she can use it in a surprise attack. Tired of it all, Janice asks when they will be able to finish off the divers, and Dylan explains that they will tie them up in heavy boots and throw them into the river to be devoured by the shark. With the mission completed, the criminals order Clara and Jimmy to take Ernie's body to the boat. However, before they can do this, the group is surprised by the policeman, who shouts for everyone to drop their weapons. Trying to explain what's going on, Clara says they're being held prisoner, but during the conversation, the man is surprised by Sean, who shoots him in the shoulder. Jimmy quickly grabs Janice to stop him retrieving his gun, and after stunning Sean with his shots, the officer manages to take Dylan down. Seizing his chance, the young man returns fire at the policeman, but the man is quicker, and fires a shot that eliminates the criminal in the same instant. Thanks to the distraction, Dylan manages to recover his gun, allowing him to finish the officer off with dozens of shots. Soon after, the man is disarmed by Clara's shot, and after taking cover in his vehicle, he runs to get his best weapons. At the same time, Janice manages to take down Jimmy, and despite being hit by a shot from the woman, the criminal charges at his opponent. Enraged, Clara uses her helmet to hit the bandit on the head, who falls into the water unconscious. In all the chaos, the shark becomes more and more agitated, and manages to free itself from the vehicle and swim freely back down the river. Seeing Dylan approaching, Clara shouts for Jimmy to dive in with her, and after firing into the water trying to hit his targets, the leader of the criminals sees Janice's body floating in the river. Thanks to this, the man goes crazy and decides to get on the boat to hunt down the survivors. As soon as he arrives in the middle of the river, Dylan starts shooting at Jimmy, who tries to swim around the place to lose him, and taking advantage of the criminal's distraction, Clara carries out a surprise attack, managing to knock the man into the water. Despite this, the diver ends up being hit in the leg, and noticing that the criminal has been knocked down, he swims to the shore so that he can stay safe. At the same time, Dylan tries to take aim at Jimmy, but before he can fire, he is surprised by Clara, who pulls him into the depths of the river. Soon after, the diver returns to the surface with the criminal, who starts swimming towards the shore in desperation. Quickly, Clara climbs into the motorboat, allowing her to reach dry land before Dylan, and so that she can surrender him, she takes the gun from Sean's body. Trying to intimidate the woman, the criminal says that she wouldn't have the courage to take the life of another human being, but she reveals that she won't have to. At that moment, Dylan is captured by the bull shark, and after several bites, the predator takes the man to the bottom of the river so that he can feed on what's left of him. Now that they're safe, Clara tends to Jimmy's wound, and together the divers look back at the river, having survived an endless nightmare. 3 weeks later, the pair return to the diver's shed, where they are visited by an official from the Australian National Bank, along with a lawyer from Ernie's company. The lawyer reveals that in his will, the former owner stated that his company should be passed on to Jimmy, who will now be the company's new owner. Soon after, the banker explains that there was a reward of £2,500 for the recovery of the gold bars, and hands the check to Clara as a thank you for her help. Finally, the men wish the divers good luck and say they can contact them if they need anything. Encouraged, Jimmy says it's time to buy a new boat for the company, and before leaving, Clara looks at Ernie's portrait on the wall, admiring the great sailor who lost his life to protect his comrades. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.